A number of alleged Ubisoft developers are providing some information about the company, and they're basically just confirming that all of our suspicions about Ubisoft are absolutely true. They don't listen to gamers. They don't listen to the actual criticism. They just view it as toxic gamer talk, and their DEI policies, especially at the corporate level, is leading to brain drain. The developers that they currently have now lack the technical expertise as well as the creativity of previous developers because they've simply just been driven out by the corporate DEI policies. Before we get to this, I'd like to ask you, please hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for notifications so you don't miss any of our future videos here at the Trent Report. Wrote this up over at thatparkplace.com. And these alleged Ubisoft developers spoke with a YouTuber, Legendary Drops, and he asked them, or at least asked one of them, how does Ubisoft internalize and discuss general criticism from players and the rest of the industry, whether that's its repetitive design, agenda-driven content, or predictable games? And the developer told him this: at a high level, they rarely talk about it. At a project level, they brush it off as toxic gamer talk. As Asmongold correctly pointed out in one of his videos, Ubisoft is filled with toxic positivity that prevents growth. The developer was also asked about Japanese gamers sharing their own criticism of Assassin's Creed Shadows. The developer said this: the criticism hasn't been talked about, and Ubisoft only issued demands that we mustn't engage with discussion on that topic publicly. So none of this is surprising. We've seen other video game developers actually do this, specifically with regards to ignoring any kind of negative feedback or criticism of their game. I think most infamously, we saw this with Firewalk Studios and PlayStation just last month, or just within the past 4 or 5 months, with regards to their game Concord. After significant backlash to the game being showcased during a PlayStation State of Play presentation at the end of May, Firewalk Studios' director of IP, Kim Krines, eventually addressed that backlash in an interview with VGC nearly a month later. She said this: yeah, that trailer, that moment is such a tiny slice of everything that we've been working on for years and years. We're excited for the game and for the IP and for the game to be in people's hands, the IP to be in people's minds. So she didn't actually address it. She's just like, yeah, that happened, but we're really excited for people to actually play the game, yada, yada, yada. And she said, I'm personally very excited for the IP, for folks to delve into the Galactic Guide, if that is something they choose to do, for these vignettes to come out on a weekly basis. You'll start to fall in love with the depth of the characters. That's something that you learn week to week. Their personalities will unfold. Their relationships will unfold for you. Their backstories, none of that is something that you can get in a tiny little slice of it. She said, but that's a start. There's something there. So I'm glad folks watched it. I'm glad they participated, and I can't wait for them to see more, to see everything that is there. So completely ignoring the actual criticism, not even addressing it, trying to sidestep even the question there asked by VGC about it, and just trying to hype up the game. Clearly was a absolute failure of a strategy, as the game was literally pulled less than 2 weeks after it was released. And now we're getting reports that it cost them around $400 million to develop this game between Probably Monsters, Firewalk Studios, and Sony after they purchased Firewalk Studios from Probably Monsters. So an absolute disaster, and Ubisoft is clearly repeating it, and did repeat it with Star Wars Outlaws, as they have admitted that the sales for that game are really soft. They had to decrease their expectations for the second quarter, which is the quarter that Star Wars Outlaws released in, by 30%. They reduced it from 500 million euros to a range between 350 and 370 million euros. We won't get that exact number until October, but absolutely disastrous. And doesn't seem like they're really listening to it when it comes to Assassin's Creed Shadows either, obviously delaying that game. But I think that delay is just, it's pointless. The damage has already been done. You're not really going to get people to kind of change their minds in 3-4 months here. It's just not going to happen. Anyways, let's move on here. Not only did this Ubisoft developer share that the company ignores the criticism it receives to its own detriment, but Legendary Drops also asked about Ubisoft's commitment to diversity and inclusion in its workplace. And the developer said this: so far, those initiatives had no impact on the team I'm part of. However, it's clear that some topics are taboo. What happened is that now people end up in meeting with HR for trivial stuff. not adding smiley in a message and adding an exclamation point at the end of a message because some are reporting it for harassment. One of the things that wasn't in your video is referring to Legendary Drops' most recent video discussing the decline of Ubisoft. And he says, is that Ubisoft had some controversy during the Me Too period, letting go managers in high positions, and some left on their own before they would be discovered. So clearly, it is having an effect. You're wasting time. You're wasting resources if you're bringing in people to HR meetings because they are not adding smileys in a message or not adding exclamation points. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely stupid. And again, it leads to massive amounts of inefficiencies. And I would wager it's driving talent from the company because if you're a talented developer, you're a creative developer, you want to actually make good, solid games, who wants to be burdened with this overbearing HR policy where you're being dragged in because you didn't put a smiley in a message? It's absolutely ridiculous. It's stupid. So you know that is probably driving talent away from the company. It's probably not attracting talent. And the talent that is there, it's making them more inefficient because they're being dragged into who even knows how long these meetings are lasting. I could wager they're probably lasting 1, 2, maybe even 3 hours when that person could be developing the game, working on the game. But no, instead, they're being lectured about not putting a smiley message, not putting a smiley in a message. Are you kidding me? Like they deserve to fail. They deserve what's coming to them. Like this is the way they act. They deserve this. This is absolutely ridiculous, unprofessional. HR departments should be dissolved at this point. But as far as the Me Too stuff, I've been talking about this for years now. That whole thing was a movement to install their people into positions of power and get people they didn't like out of those positions of power. So they installed even more radical feminists into those positions. And that's mainly what the Me Too movement turned into. It's unfortunate because there probably needed to be some justice done because you did have absolute scumbags who were committing crimes and shouldn't have been behaving the way that they were behaving. But I think at the end of the day, that movement was co-opted and turned into a giant power grab. And I think that has been to the detriment of many companies and clearly at Ubisoft because the developer says this when asked how this changed the editorial direction of the company and its games. The developer said, the editorial direction and overall mindset shifted from boys club to save content. Reaching for plain character K in Star Wars is the perfect example of this. The idea to have beautiful characters such as in Baldur's Gate or Uncharted is met with distrust. So you have this power grab, you got new people, they've got a new agenda, they've got new ideas, and they're going to push those new ideas and new agenda because that is what they really want to do. They're all about pushing their cultural revolution. They're about pushing their feminist ideologies. They're about pushing their woke ideologies. And we see this across the board. It's not just Ubisoft, but Ubisoft obviously being one of the biggest examples of this. And that's exactly what has happened because at the end of the day, when you don't have people at the top making the right decisions, you get bad people making bad decisions and it leads to bad outcomes. And that's exactly what happened. And clearly the Me Too movement was able to get in a bunch of people that probably were unqualified at Ubisoft, and they turned out Star Wars Outlaws, and it was an absolute abysmal failure. 30% decline in expected revenue from 500 million euros to 350 to 370. Total disaster, meltdown. The developer then added, safe content also leads to limited opportunity on the gameplay side. Even for Star Wars, we had to work with Disney, which would have shut down most attempts at depicting a true criminal underworld with cruelty and drama. So not only are you now have these people, but they are trying to collaborate with the Walt Disney Company, which also embraces this ideology, and it doesn't allow you to actually do real things because the Walt Disney Company is fully embrace this ideology as well, and they don't actually want to create quality things. So yes, it leads to creative disasters because you're no longer able to actually explore cruelty and drama in the underworld of Star Wars. It also leads you to doing absolutely stupid things like creating K-Vess, a gender-swapped Han Solo set in the same time that Han Solo is around and literally is dressing like Han Solo. Just complete and utter derivative garbage. The developers then asked, what has been the message from management to the staff about Ubisoft's declining sales? What do they believe is the reason behind it? And this is what he said. The fun fact is that they don't talk much about it. They mainly focus on the fact that they reach their financial objectives, which are mainly achieved through casual player sales, not the vocal gamer community that are really sick of what you described in your video. Also, something to know is that through the years, the number of management floors have increased to a ridiculous amount. So communication is often blurry unless they come directly from HQ. And even then, it's almost entirely corpo BS that isn't useful in the end. So it's not surprising that they thought they could just continue to ride off of normies, and normies would not be really engaged with what is happening in the culture, but they are now. They are engaged. This stuff has been shoved in their face so often that even normies are picking up on the patterns. They're seeing all of the messaging. They're seeing the agenda, and they are not happy with it. And they're closing their wallets just like the more hardcore gaming community has been doing for a while now. So these decisions have consequences, and Ubisoft is now facing them. But the management stuff doesn't surprise me either, right? When you decide to embrace DEI policies, you're literally increasing your management, you're increasing your HR, yada, yada, yada. So you're basically just increasing bloat, you're increasing your costs, you're literally creating departments that serve absolutely no purpose for what should be your company's end goal, which is creating entertaining video games. Instead, now you're literally funding DEI agendas through your company. I love the Jabba the Hutt shot there. Another Ubisoft developer appeared to corroborate this information and informed Legendary Drops. Ubisoft, as an employer, shows little regard for its developers. What happens in practice is that they essentially push out senior engineers, promoting junior developers to senior roles after just a few years of experience, oftentimes with experience in just one engine. Meanwhile, experienced developers with far broader skill sets are being overlooked. This constant cycle of turnover with inexperienced leaders to a noticeable leads to a noticeable drop in quality, with more bugs appearing in their games. We saw that with Star Wars Outlaws. How buggy was that game? Jeez, what a disaster. Look at the stormtrooper like shooting into the wall. And then like the whole ridiculousness of Kay like backhanding people with her bare hand and trying to hit stormtroopers that got these big helmets on, and she's knocking them out. It's utterly ridiculous. The passionate, dedicated developers leave, while those who are just going through the motions stay behind. This doesn't just affect the technical quality of their games, but also impacts design and creativity. Yeah, 100%. Plus, you're having to deal with the managerial state here. Who's going to drag you into HR meetings for not putting the smiley face in the message. For instance, you'll find designers working on first-person shooter mechanics who have never played a first-person shooter, or engineers who don't understand how the mechanics they're building are supposed to feel. There is a lack of passion and skill across the board, and the results are obvious. Well, this clearly looks like it has everything to do with the DEI initiatives. They are promoting people that are unqualified for the jobs because they're promoting people based on skin tone, based on gender. That is exactly what they're doing. They're hiring people based on those qualities. We know this because it's literally on their website. That is what they're doing. They also have a literal program, mentorship program, that excludes men, that is only for women and so-called non-binary individuals, which has been deemed illegal by legal analyst Andrew Esquire. So we know this. This is exactly what they are doing. None of this is surprising because we have this on their website. We're just now getting even more confirmation of it. I mean, the fact that they are literally hiring people to make first-person shooters that have never even played them, I mean, you can't make it up. You cannot make it up. It's not surprising at all because this is what these companies do. That's what they do. They hire people that are unqualified so they can make their DEI policies, DEI agenda look good and further it. That's what they want to do. So that is what these alleged Ubisoft developers had to say to Legendary Drops, basically confirming everything we have suspected. that this game is absolutely, or this, excuse me, this company is absolutely atrociously run. Starts at the top. They are just absolutely giantly bloated. They need to be cutting a lot of this fat. They need to be getting rid of their DEI departments. But I doubt that they're going to do that because, as we see, they don't want to listen to any of the criticism. That's just toxic gamer talk. But if Ubisoft wants to continue to stick their head in the sand, they will continue to get roasted on the spit because that is what is happening to them. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, but to always speak the truth.